All right, we are live for the second time this week, which is awesome. So today we're talking with Corey Bowman. Corey and I actually met, I think we met via LinkedIn. Corey has an awesome business with his partner, Graham. We're actually working on some things together right now. So Corey and I were talking, and I was like, man, it'd be really awesome to not only get to give you the opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more about your story, but then also just what they're doing with Vision Leads, because I think it's such an impactful thing for the market that they're supporting. So, Corey, I'll give you a chance. Love for you to kind of tell everybody a little bit more about you and what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, that's great. I usually like to try to sort of maybe start things at somewhat of a high level so people kind of understand, who our audience is and who we're trying to support. And, for the most part, when there are executive level people that are looking to have peer relationships, new peer relationships outside their network with other executives, that's really where we shine. So LinkedIn, still to this day is, the premier place for executives to meet other executives. And so our desire was really to kind of, to help the people our age and older. So I'm 55. I would say our average client is 55 and over. Not that that's all that there is, but, these are people that have left corporate for the most part. They've done their 80-hour weeks and they have grandchildren that they'd love to get to know. They have a lifestyle that they're leaning towards, but they still want to make a difference. They still want to make an impact. They love to be able to share their leadership and skills, strategy. And so really what ends up happening is they end up in these fractional or interim roles, consulting roles, coming out of their corporate life. And so, the first stopping point usually is, okay, how do I actually get in front of new businesses that really need to have this sort of high level leadership, either for short periods of time or, over a long advisory role, something like that. And so often they don't know where to start. They've had a lot of support systems around them in their life. They may not have even written a resume for 25 years because they've been headhunted for 25 years. So really they've now kind of stepped into the ocean a little bit and realized, wow, like there's a lot I need to do. I need to understand how to prospect. How do I even put my offering together? How do I even, get to that starting point of breaking outside of my network, when maybe they'll have a couple of roles in referral. And so that's really where we kind of come in. It's like, well, what is the need? Some people have incredible sales skills because that's their place. They were maybe CMO. They've spent a lot of time on the GTM side of things, or they're technologists and they're incredible technologists, but they really don't know how to kind of put themselves out there and communicate their offering. So that's really where we come into play. I think at a high level, anyways, and then we can dig as
Sure.
deep as you want to go, Drew, obviously. And but that's our desire, is to really meet people at that level. What is it that we can provide services for you? And we take care of everything from helping them with their profile to managing messaging for outreach, to even to booking meetings on their behalf and sort of being a whole sort of channel, a marketing channel for them on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Like when you and I first started talking, that was one of the biggest things that we discussed was just that market of, and I'm not more of that, I would say boomer type age group that has just an extensive amount of experience. And it's like, hey, I'm not ready to go sit on a beach or golf every day. Like I still want to do something, but I don't want to do those 80-hour work week. How do I make my LinkedIn profile say that? Right. Or how do I get in front of the businesses that I can take my 40 years or 30 years of experience and come in and really help that new business for in a fractional sense, right? And from a business perspective, as a business owner, being able to find somebody that has that level of experience that's willing to give you 10 hours a week or 20 hours a month or whatever it may be, they're going to bring a multitude of experience to your business, and you're not having to hire that person full time, at a mid six figure salary and a benefit package and all of that sort of stuff. So for that growing company especially, and that's obviously there's different areas that somebody could fit in, but that to me was like the area where I was like, you guys are servicing an area that is massively needed. And for somebody that's going from a full-time gig, like you said, maybe they were at the same place for the last 15 years. Like, well, how do I
Hmm.
create my LinkedIn profile so that it says like, this is what I want to do now,
Yes.
So that was something we talked a lot about.
Well, and when you think of trends and you think of the shift, so you know, sort of the generation sort of just slightly above me. So I'm 55, I would say 65 and older. That generation, people stayed in the organization they worked for first for a long time, and they were
Yeah.
often brought up in that organization, right? So they were given responsibilities sort of above their pay grade. That was kind of part of the growth of how do I work my way into, other positions over time. And then we started to see a lot more shorter stints for people in different roles, right? Where, you didn't work for a company anymore for more than, say, 5 years. And then it became 2 years. And now we're coming into this new incredible space, which is that, for low costs, incredibly innovative, future thinking people can spin up a company and create some interim success, like a beginning success where they'll like investors are looking at it going, wow, like, you know what? They're already doing 100 MRR, 100,000 MRR, and these guys are wonderful. But no one's brought them up in the organization to understand, well, what does scale look like? How do I communicate? Once my team starts to expand to 4 times the size, how do I deal with all of the other measurements? And if it's technical or whatever it is. And these are the skill sets, that high level skill set that leaders bring that we work with to them. So it's been an educational experiment, I would say, for the last 6 years, certainly since COVID, where a lot of people did also kind of left corporate because, what, if there's any time, maybe now's the time, you know what I mean? And so we had a lot of people leave, but it became an educational thing for the younger crowd of founders and small business operators coming out that, there's actually people out there that can give you a portion of their time for a fraction of the price at that super high level of understanding
Yeah.
and bring you up, show you how to be a CEO, show your team how to be one level up at scale and communicate and all of those wonderful things. So for us, it was like, what a cool relationship that's starting to happen, which is, incredibly talented people that want to offer up a portion of their time to people, and incredibly talented people coming out that haven't had that growth system within an organization to really set them up for success at scale. So you've got this like perfect marriage that's ready to happen, but for the executive type people, yeah, they need to know where to start. Well, how do I actually get this ball rolling? How do I open up those conversations? And that's really what we do.
Yeah.
That's the biggest part of what we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think really specifically too, and we've obviously in the first 10 minutes here, we've talked about a few different things, but really specifically what Corey and Graham have done with Vision Leads is they're so focused on that fractional executive, but then also helping them not only create the profile and make sure that what they're putting out into the world is expressing what they're looking for, but they're also helping through LinkedIn and some other mediums that are really helping these individuals get some more exposure directly to the people that are actively searching for these individuals. So it's funny because I spent a lot of time in like the staffing world, right? And that's definitely not what you guys are doing. Your goal is putting these individuals in front of these executives or business owners or founders and saying, hey, here's what I can offer you, and helping them curate those messages and all of those things. And so I'd love for you to kind of talk, Corey, about like if I'm in an executive that's kind of getting into that fractional space, like what are the things that you kind of take somebody through and helping them get that more exposure and things of that nature?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a philosophy that we're coming from. On the surface of things, who is your audience, or who is your ideal audience, and all of that depends, and we can kind of walk a little bit through that. But this is, who is my ideal client profile? Who is that? And then we want to look at your profile. Well, does your profile scream, "I am the solution for you, sir"? Those things are really important, right? So one of the exercises that we usually go through is to really, and everything that we do is conversational. So we do use AI. We record all of the calls with our clients so that we can get the tone and we can get in a little bit deeper understanding. We can actually tease some artificial intelligence to kind of give us, hey, like, what are some areas we could kind of come around this to figure out for the client. So for instance, they may have had an industry they would always have been really successful in, but they want to try a different industry. So there may be the I wants, and then there may be the where am I mostly suited, and we kind of weight
Right.
those things depending upon need. Do I need work right now? Low hanging fruit might be the place for us to go. And once we identify, groups of what we call ICPs or ideal client profiles, then we look back at their profile. What is your experience? What are the learnings that you've had and the things you've done in the past that speak directly to the pains that this particular industry of this particular client has?
Hmm.
Right. And often it's glaring. It's just we haven't thought about it that way. Right. So, the natural order of things is, I'm looking to connect with some people who I have a commonality with that I believe I can help. The first thing they're going to do is look at your profile. Right. And this person connected to me. Who are they? Well, what does your byline say? What does your about section say? And if they're really interested, what does your experience say to them that really continues to speak? I'm your man, or I'm your woman. Like, I'm the person that can be here to solve your problem. And so these are kind of key pieces. Then once we have that and we understand, well, what are the pains that they have? What are the kinds of success points that I can talk about myself that are related to that particular client? And what kind of outcomes should they experience? Once we have that, then we're building frameworks for the narrative on how we want to talk to them. So vision leads were not about giving you, here's 30,000 leads, go ham on 30,000 leads. In fact, what we want to do is we want to narrow it down to small lists that we can work, that we can talk to at a very, at as, to try to stay at scale as best we can. Because of course it's always a numbers game in particularly cold outreach. But how can I speak directly to their problems and their pains, very specific to their industry, very specific to those kinds of people? And so when we get that nice little match, and we've built a good narrative, we can start messaging. And so if you were to sort of think of it like a triangle. At the top is my profile, right? At one of the bottom corners is the client's profile, and then the messaging. And those things need to all be speaking the same language at the
Yeah.
same time that I'm talking to that audience. So, your profile's fluid at that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, big time. I think the other thing too that I really loved about what you guys are doing is, and we've talked extensively about this just in general, but I think we're in a very fast moving environment right now. And, I have this conversation with a lot of people. You and I have just had this more extensively, I think, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of widgets. There's a lot of new platforms, and like this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I think the one thing, like I get hundreds of messages probably a day, right? Whether through it's LinkedIn, Facebook, emails, like I mean, I'm getting bombarded all the time, right? And so I think the one thing that you guys have really done is not just say, hey, we're just going to plug and play and hope that this stuff works. It's really what I would consider more of that concierge. Like you guys are leveraging technology in the way that it should be leveraged, but also saying, hey, this is a human to human connection. So like, how do we get above the noise to get you in front of like the right people and say the right things? But also the goal is to create that connection on some level, right? And so like that's the one thing I think that you guys are really doing to separate yourself from, the 50 other technology platforms that are trying to do, maybe a fraction of what you guys are doing. And I think that's a really big part of the success that you guys are having, right? Because it's not a take this person, throw them into this template and go. It's really like you said, how do we marinate all those things or bring all those things together and really make sure that this is successful long term, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, everything that you said there. And I guess I would lay it out this way. So in the end, it's going to be a human to human interaction with another executive who has a problem you believe you can solve for them, right? Ultimately.
Right.
Cutting through the noise. I mean, since the pandemic, the amount of people trying to break through on LinkedIn, then in the last 3 years with AI coming into the fray, I think what we're learning more than anything is that people do desire to work with people. Ultimately, that's what we want. And the tools are fantastic, but where's the human in the loop with those tools? And so part of the way that we look at this is, well, if I can lower the costs for my client by having a lot of the minutia of work done through AI, that works provided that every endpoint where decisions are made is a human in the loop, right? So this is kind of where we bring in the conversational part to what we do. Sure, let's go through, let's find out what AI can give us. Let's find out, we're building our own knowledge base, because obviously we have lots of executives, and we're building that knowledge base over time so that, well, if I have 25 CFOs, that probably their clients have similar pains and
Right.
all of that. So we can use that as a piece, and then we can use what the client says. These are the things that, this would be an example. This is the thing that clients come to me that they've been leaving on the back burner, and it's finally come to roost, and they're down on their knees going, please, like, help me, because this is what's killing me now, or I'm going to die on the table if I don't figure this out. Right. And we learn what those things are. And when we do that, and we, again, we kind of let those things bubble to the top, and then we have a decision moment, with that client, well, then those decisions are all human based. And we're talking now, okay, I am reaching out to a person, trying to speak to them at their level. That is what cuts through the noise, because you're hitting home on something very relevant.
Yeah.
If it's the industry, well, what's the words that industry, what are the acronyms that industry uses? Like, all of these things are really meaningful. And so, yeah, to your point, it's not just letting go and letting the machines, take off. Yeah.
I think one of the other things that when we first met that you really talked about, which I think is a pain point for a lot of fractional executives, is a lot of times what happens is you get the contract, right? And or you get the the deal, whatever it is, that you started working with a client. At some point in time, that company either is going to outgrow that person where they need a full-time person in that role, right? Which means that you're going to end there, or it's for a period of time. And so a lot of times what happens is like, okay, great, I'm booked, I'm working 20 hours a week, which is what I want to do. And then all of a sudden, boom, that ends. And it's like, oh, well, now I got to go back, and now I have to start remarketing myself, and I have to get in front of more people and have more conversations. And so I think one of the other things that you guys have really done well is not only helping get people in front of those right people, but then also, hey, even though you have this role right now, if you want to continue to work, we should probably keep putting you in front of the right people and still building those connections with the right people.
Yes.
And I think that's another piece that happens to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, so this, part of the exercise in what we do is to understand what's the life cycle, what's the business life cycle of a fractional. And so you're speaking to it. It's like, right now I'm full. I don't need any work. And guess what naturally happens to all of us that don't need any work? We don't prospect. We don't create any relationships. We don't build anything on top of funnel that we can kind of reach back to, right? And so there's these moments in time where we want to start to look at it as, well, what does the program actually mean? Well, the program means, am I open for business and I'm actively looking for new business? Am I, just creating new relationships with people while I'm full up? Because goodness knows, 3 months, 6 months, I could be talking to the perfect client that likely will be, a great client for me in 9 months. And that would be perfect timing. But I never, if I don't meet them and they're really, forward thinking, we're not going to ever meet. So, and then am I warming those things up? So do I see something on the forefront, right? So the wonderful thing, about, different types of roles, and in particular the executive role, is, they can think in 3 and 6 and 12 months ahead, because Well, that's part of the things we learn as leaders at a high level is we can't be thinking about just tomorrow every day. So we can start to, anticipate that, there's going to be a relationship that's going to happen with vision leads where, are we warming up leads that we have already put in sort of in a pipeline while you were full up? Are you actively looking now? Or do we just want to keep those relationships alive? Can you take 3 or 4 calls a month that you just allot some time to just to get to know new, wonderful businesses that are on the upswing and that you can create relationships with? And it changes everything because the moment that you see that gap happening in front of you and you have somewhere to tap into, the pressure is just not nearly as as painful. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I think one thing too, like I know you guys aren't focused on this per se from a business standpoint, but for the business owners that are out there that are looking for like, hey, who is the right fractional for me? Or how do I put this out, out on LinkedIn or things of that nature? Corey and Graham have done a great job of not only developing those relationships with these fractional executives, but I think that's just another avenue that you guys would be able to provide so much value in is like the business owner that's like, hey, how do I even find these people? Or like, do you guys have like who in your stock, is the
Mm,
perfect CMO for this business? And I think that's another opportunity. And I know that's not where you guys focus, but I know there are a lot of business owners out there that are trying to figure out like, hey, how do I even find this person or what do I look for? Or and you guys have a lot of that experience of having these conversations with those people,
absolutely, and I'll say this too, Drew. That so there's a couple ways to look at this. So one is that I see the intermingling between our clients. So like sometimes clients like I have someone who's an incredible brand expert, right?
Right,
And then another person who is a CFO is like, well, I could use some help putting like even just my story together because I don't really understand how to do that, right? So there's
right,
that part of it. And for what it's worth, I mean, this is part of what ends up happening is that we are in relationships with our clients, and it's kind of the best part. So I am the guy who's 55 coming out of MySpace, and I love to work remotely, and I like to own a little bit of my time and all these things. And part of this means that that there's sort of shared relationships that we get to have with the executives that we work with. And
yeah,
often there's need. It's like I'm working for this company right now, and they're the person's maybe managing capital for them, but really they could use a go to market person. And it's like, well, then you know what we should connect you with, you know Drew, right?
right,
And and so ultimately that's another part of it. And then of course just generally taking calls all the time. I mean, anyone wants to reach out to me and say, hey Corey, like I saw you and Drew talking about this, and I'm a small business, here's where we're at, we're only 2 million or 3 million or whatever, do you think there's someone for me in this capacity? Yeah, I mean, ultimately it's like we need to be able to move people to where we think we can offer value,
for sure.
because ultimately this is the new way of things. um you
Yeah,
know
big time. And I think one of the things too, and I'll say this like as we're kind of getting towards the end here, but I think one of the things that you and I have had the opportunity, Corey, is to talk on a pretty personal level, like through some of the other stuff we're doing, right? But the one thing that I think you guys have absolutely nailed is you're really in it in creating the relationships, right? And like on multiple fronts. And it's a lot of times you get in a headset where sometimes it's just like revenue, 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 which is important, right? Like you need revenue to have a business,
or
right? So I'm not taking that away. But I think the one thing that I've just appreciated about working with you and Graham so far on just some of the projects that we're working on is never once has there really been that conversation of like, okay, well, exactly what's in it for me? It's like, how do we do this together and be able to provide value back and forth to each other? And I know that that's exactly how you guys handle your clients too, right? And I think that's the separator. And I know I kind of said it already, but yeah, I think that, like I said, I think that that's really the goal that you guys have had is like, how do you provide that value, right? And I know that's kind of a, generic term, but that's really at the core of every conversation we've ever had, especially when it comes to business. And so I love about you guys in general.
Yeah, and it makes work life uh, a joy, right?
Yeah.
So as you get older, and you're not old at all, Drew, you're young and beautiful and all that great stuff.
Getting there.
But those things, adding value, wanting to work with people that you can help. So like we have these calls, and the calls just like, can I help you? Right? I mean, is there a
Right.
fit for us to be able to help you? And if there isn't, man, I got wonderful friends like Drew. I've got all kinds of other people, and I want to steer you to where you can have success, because ultimately, what's the point otherwise, right? And so it makes it a joy to work with people you can help. You can see that you can be of value, and then in the same regard, that they have value, that we can sort of create a community out of it. It is sort of a beautiful added bonus,
Right.
about an organization like this, and yours actually, Drew, too, and the partnership that we're starting is pretty exciting too. So
Yeah.
to add
Yeah.
more value to
Fantastic.
our customers, all those great
Yeah, I
things.
mean, it's funny. I think that's how our conversation started, where it was like, I think you'd reached out or send me a message, and I was like, listen, I don't know if there's synergy here or, what it is, like, but let's just get on a call and have a conversation. And it's funny, I would say a lot of my connections, especially as of late, have been that way, where it's like I'll get a message from somebody and I'm like, okay, they said something enough that's intriguing. Like, I don't know if I need their service, but like, let's just have a conversation because I'm talking to people all day, right? And like, I'm not the fit for everybody. And I will tell somebody like, listen, that's not where I work, right? But I do know four other people that I can introduce you to that are going to be a better fit. And so it's awesome to be able to continue to build that network through good relationships that are really just trying to figure out how do we provide more value to people.
Agreed.
And so, yeah, I love that. But so Corey, I'll give you the last say here before we jump off. But we kind of went over exactly who you guys are looking to work with, who you're helping the most, which is that fractional executive or the executive that's getting into that fractional space. But what would be, I guess, maybe a couple things that if there is those individuals that are listening to this, what are maybe a couple things that you would advise them to do? And then obviously one of those would be reach out to you, but what are
Sure.
some things that you can give to them that they can take away from this?
I mean, I'd say first and foremost, really kind of do a detail, particularly if you're just getting started in this. Take a detailed approach. Use AI if you haven't used it, but start asking those questions like, what are my skill sets? What does that offer look like? How would I position myself? That's really key, because just understanding, how am I going to lay this out? Many people don't know how they're going to put the pricing together, what can be taken from that. So that I would say is key. And give yourself up to bats. You don't have to be perfect. That's kind of the cool thing about going out there, but decide to reach out to 5 to 10 people a week at their level, and have some meetings that you don't know where the heck this is going to go, because what ends up really forming from that is understanding, how do I get down to the sort of crux of what's going on in a discovery, and then finding out, if you haven't spoken to so many people, well, what are they looking for on average? What is it that's really keeping them up at night? Because ultimately that's a key. So I would say those are the two places I would start. It's like, don't not start because you haven't got it all polished. Because, the truth is that, again, it goes back to, people want to work with great people. And if they find out you're great and you've got the skill set they're looking for, it's kind of a no brainer at that point. It doesn't really matter how well the call went.
Right.
So I would say that that's probably the best place. Really start to increase your network and reach out to people. It's important. There's all kinds of other things too. I always say conferences, like be in those conferences, try to find some speaking events, all those kinds of things that I don't do, because I think those are other channels and multiple channels. You know, you as a person who's been in marketing, Drew, you get it. We want multiple channels. We want to start creating maybe posts about around some thought leadership. What can you offer people for free that you know that can, you know, and help their business in whatever capacity your experience or your expertise is?
Big time.
Yeah, I would say those are the
Awesome.
sort of areas I would start in LinkedIn,
Well,
particularly.
I will make sure to tag Vision Leads. You know, so if somebody wants to reach out, they can go directly to the website and connect with you guys there. And obviously, Corey, you'll get tagged in this as well. But I appreciate your time as always. The friendship that we've created and the stuff that we're working on together. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah,
But it was
me
awesome
too,
just to
Jim.
be able to give you a chance to kind of talk about everything you guys got going on because I think it's
I
absolutely
appreciate
fantastic.
that.
So
Yeah, I
appreciate you, man.
appreciate that too. So thank you, Drew. Appreciate it.